2012-13 Bill, introduction.
The bill is set down for first reading forthwith.
Mr Speaker, I move...
Honourable Bill English.
Mr Speaker, I move the Impress Supply first for 2012-13 Bill be now read a first time.
The question is that the motion be agreed to. Those of that opinion will say aye. To the contrary, no. The ayes have it.
Impress Supply first for 2012-13 Bill, first reading.
The bill is set down for second reading forthwith. Call on Government Order of the Day number 6.
Appropriation 2011-12 Supplementary Estimates Bill, second reading.
Mr Speaker.
Honourable Bill English.
Mr Speaker, I move that the Appropriation 2011-12 Supplementary Estimates Bill and the Impress Supply first for 2012-13 Bill be now read a second time. Mr Speaker, this Supplementary Estimates Bill carries on in the same tone as the budget for 2012 with more of a sensible fiscal management in difficult times. Mr Speaker, it's another means by which the government can continue on the path to getting better results for public services. And it was fascinating to see over the last couple of days how the political opposition reacted to the government announcing 10 results that it's going to be chasing for better public services. And I think it was described by one prominent Labor member as pretty well all meaningless stuff. Pretty well all meaningless stuff. How did Mr Parker do the same this morning? Pretty well all meaningless stuff. And actually, for the Labor Party, it is. Because getting results is exactly what they don't want. Because getting results means a smaller government. Imagine if more teenagers stayed on the rails and didn't get in trouble. That might mean perhaps less social workers. It might mean a smaller government department somewhere. And of course, in the Labor Party's world, that is failure. It's failure. If you end up with smaller government because the community's working better, then that is a failure. Because the Labor Party now represents only one thing, and that is the industrial interests of some parts of the public sector. And that's it. And actually, in our interaction with those people who are providing public services, more and more of them don't want to be represented by the Labor Party because those people on the front line want to get results. And the Labor Party doesn't. And more public servants now understand that. And some of their traditional allegiances are therefore weakening. But this government is determined to pursue the notion of getting results. And in this context, can I compliment the Prime Minister? Because he is the first Prime Minister that I can recall who has been willing to go out in public and say, here are 10 things we want to achieve for public services, and say exactly what they are. I don't think, I know that the previous Labor Prime Minister didn't do that. Didn't do it. Never actually went out and said, here are 10 things we want to do better. And that is actually a much more difficult thing than going out to say, here are 10 things we've got more money and we're going to spend it on them, which is what usually happens. The Labor Party says, well, you know we care because we got another $30 million. Well, if that worked, why do we still, after a decade of a Labor government with more money than they knew what to do with, why did we end up with worse intractable social problems at the end of that decade than we had at the start? I mean, that's the measure of it. Why were crime rates worse at the end of that decade than at the start of it? Why was long-term welfare dependency worse despite the best economic decade the whole world had had in 2 generations? Why was long-term welfare dependency worse at the end of that decade? And the reason is because you can spend endless money on these things and show you've got more public servants to do it, but if you don't focus on getting results, adapt when you discover that the program isn't working, then you're not going to get results. You're just going to spend an awful lot of money.
4 years of results.
Yeah, well, I'll tell the minister one very good result. For the first time in a generation, we're going to close some prisons. And there's nothing saves money. At least there's nothing saves money like closing. Look, I know it means less prison officers. I know that's a failure. It means less prison officers, which means less of the prison officer union paying their fees to the Labor Party. We think that is unfortunate for the prison officers, and we are going to try and get them jobs elsewhere. But it's not worth keeping a prison open to employ the prison officers. And that is the difference between the National Party and the Labor Party. They would rather keep the prison to keep employing the prison officers. We'd rather have less prisoners reoffending and close the prison. It's pretty straightforward. And we'd rather have some performance in our public services. So if we take the justice and law and order area, the government has negotiated a world-leading contract with, with the consortium that's going to run Wirri Prison, which focuses on reducing reoffending. Along with another example being immunisation rates, these are things governments have talked about for years without making any appreciable progress, without making any real difference. So the kind of results that the government announced the other day are not new. It's not as if these are a different set of aspirations than what's been articulated by governments for decades. The difference is we're taking it seriously. We're going to put these results into the performance expectations of public sector chief executives. We're going to have real-time, total transparency for the public to examine whether we're making progress on these results. And we're going to put ourselves to the test. And we would hope, and I would guess actually, that the Labor Party is interested in reducing the number of assaults on children. In fact, I know they are. I'll take it for granted. But I hope that they will support the changes that go with that. I suspect they won't do that. I suspect they'll say, we want to reduce the number of assaults on children, but if you do anything different with social services, that's bad, that's the mean, nasty national government. Well, actually, I think the public has moved on well ahead of the Labor Party, where the public accept that in order to get results, we will need to change things. In fact, we have been changing things. In this last budget, there are $4.5 billion of new initiatives funded, $4.5 billion of new initiatives funded from $3 billion of savings. Mr. Speaker, the best thing for fiscal policy are the things that are the right results for the community. A teenager who stays on the rails, a prisoner who doesn't reoffend, a vulnerable child who is not assaulted. That's how we save money. And this government has set store by getting better results in order to get back to surplus, not going around cutting services. And Mr. Speaker, that fits in the broader picture of an economy where we have to focus strongly on competitiveness, on productivity, The world's making it harder to rebalance this economy away from consumption and debt to investment and savings and a highly productive export sector. But that doesn't mean we're going to stop trying. In fact, what it means is we're going to have to try even harder because if people want higher incomes and more job security, then we need to have a steadily growing economy. The supplementary estimates are being delivered in the context of more dark clouds on the horizon around the world. It's our view that by taking considered and consistent decisions both about our fiscal progress and getting to surplus and our drive for productivity and competitiveness, New Zealanders can look forward to moderate growth that will help underpin their job security and give them the opportunity.
Sorry to interrupt the honourable member. His time has expired. The question is that the motion be agreed to. The Honourable David Parker.
Mr. Speaker, what a load of bollocks that was in respect of targets.